As we all know, security teams have SOCs. But what if your organization needs something more strategic like ROC? I'm Swapnil Bhartiya and this is Secure by Design. Today I'm joined by Sumedh Thakar, CEO of Qualys, to talk about the company's big push into proactive cyber risk management through its Risk Operations Center framework. Today we are going to explore how the ROC helps organizations quantify, prioritize, and actually reduce cyber risk, and how the newly expanded mROC Partner Alliance makes its vision scalable across global enterprises. Let's get into it. Sumedh, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Swapnil. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Sumedh, this is the first time we are hosting Qualys on the show. I would love to know a bit about the company and your own journey.
Yeah, look, Qualys, we've been around for quite a while now. In fact, I've been at Qualys for 21 years. I've been one of the engineers who started working early days when we founded the company, and I grew in the company to take over as CEO last 4 years. So it's been a very exciting journey for me personally. But Qualys, we are into cyber risk management. And so in cybersecurity, of course, you have different areas. There's areas around threat detection and response when an attacker is in your environment, how to figure out and track them and hunt them down. And then there is a proactive security, and that's where Qualys plays. We started originally with in cybersecurity, we started originally with vulnerability management, and we've then moved on with our innovation the last few years into remediation, and then now in a more holistic cyber risk management platform for our customers so that they can really think of how to measure cyber risk and how to respond to investing in reducing the risk around cybersecurity.
Last year, you introduced the Risk Operations Center and Managed Risk Operations Center concept. For those who may not know, what exactly are ROC and mROC, and how are they different from a traditional SOC?
That's a great question. Look, I think when we started with vulnerability management many years ago, overall cyber risk management was essentially just vulnerability scanning and fixing and patching issues. I think overall, as everything has moved to digital platforms, the overall risk has gone up across multiple different areas. And cybersecurity has become a key business risk right now. And in cybersecurity, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of focus on a SOC and an MDR service, but a lot of those focus on how to detect an attacker once they're in the environment. And customers really, what we felt was have been struggling, a lot of organizations struggling with how to think of cybersecurity, which is essentially a risk management exercise, how to think of it from a proactive perspective. And when you talk about risk, the first question is how much? And if you cannot explain how much risk you have in terms of dollars, how can you explain how much you should spend on reducing that risk? And so now what has happened is that we're seeing a lot of folks struggle more with how to define risk, how to report on that risk, and how to kind of see where you are in your journey to reducing that risk. And so the Risk Operations Center is a concept of proactively bringing all of your assets, all of your tool data, everything together, applying threat intelligence, applying business context to see how much money would you lose if there is a cyber attack. And then based on your current state of where you are in terms of that risk profile, decide how much and where you want to spend to reduce that risk, and then report that to the board. And so that's the concept of a risk operations center, which in my opinion, every company really needs to have, because if you don't have that, you're fighting infinite risk and you're spending money on cyber, not really knowing how much of that is giving what kind of a ROI on your investment. So the risk operations center is really about the concept of implementing a proactive risk operationalization program in the company that then of course remediates the risk and also reports the risk. And what we found out, a lot of organizations really are struggling even to define how much risk they have. And that's where we launched the concept of a mROC. People are familiar with MDR on the risk threat detection side, but similarly, proactive risk management. An mROC program is a managed risk operations center program where partners and service providers can provide services around cyber risk quantification, cyber risk aggregation, cyber risk monitoring, proactive monitoring, and cyber risk remediation. And we found a lot of excitement in managed service provider partners who are working in a saturated market for MDR because there are so many MDR players, So for them, the excitement to provide a new service to their customer that is around proactive risk management and reporting, board reporting, and creating reports that they can take to the board has been very exciting. And so we just recently announced, our first set of partners that are selected partners that are working with us closely and offering these services, and that is really helping us sort of, push through on the concept of a ROC, and then the mROC is the enabler of the ROC.
I mean, every business has a different risk profile. How do you ensure consistency and quality across diverse global partners, especially when you don't always directly engage with the end customers?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And look, I think any business today is now enabled by digital technology, right? I mean, you see all the way Uber is fully digital, when the taxi industry was not. And so, but to your point, every company's risk profile from a digital attack is different. And that exactly is the point, that you cannot just spend money on cyber by just looking at a complete industry average or something like that. You really have to look at what would happen in your context, right? And by the way, there are multiple different things that could happen when a breach happens. It could be a ransomware. Well, how much money would you lose if there was a ransomware attack? It could be an outage caused by a breach. Like, how much would that cost you? There's reputational damage, though these days, even though we get notices of compromise, people are not changing their provider. When was the last time you changed your provider because you got a notice of compromise? So the risk equation is evolving, and so every company needs to first say, well, how much dollar value is at risk because of a cyber attack, and then based on that decide how much should they invest and in which areas to reduce that cyber risk down to an acceptable level, right? Any risk management, there is no zero risk. So you should not be trying to say, like, I'm going to bring the risk down to zero. You have a risk appetite. So how do you talk about a risk appetite with your board? How do you decide what your risk appetite is based on your business? And that's exactly where our partners come into play. We are a technology provider. We provide the tools, but the Risk Operations Center is a process, people, and tool. And so while Qualys has a great platform that provides a Risk Operations Center in the cloud, the work to be sitting with your CFO, sitting with your CIO, sitting with your CISO to understand what the risk profile for the specific company is, and then based on that deciding how you want to implement a risk operations center is really the value that a partner is bringing. And so for us, our partners, we of course maintain a relationship with the customer through the partner, but our partners are the ones on the front line working with the customer, understanding their business and helping them think through how they should think of risk management, risk quantification, and then what is the probability of that loss happening, right? First, you need to know how much is your business worth. Second is how much loss you could have. And then the third is what is the probability of that loss happening. And these are the things that our platform enables, but then that's the opportunity for partners to sit with customers to customize and individualize that to every company.
Is ROC just about understanding and visualizing risk, or does it also help organizations take action, meaning actionable insights and remediation support?
That's such a great question because, just building risk dashboards and taking selfies with them doesn't make you secure, right? You got to do something to fix that. But the problem is if you don't have a good view of where you should focus on your effort, a lot of time people are fixing a lot of things that actually don't reduce their risk because it just, it's a theoretical attack as an example. So that's exactly where the value of the Risk Operations Center comes, not only from the security side, but also the operational side and the IT side. And so what a Risk Operations Center does, it brings all of your different risk factors together. It will apply threat intelligence to see are these even attackable, as an example. Then we apply the business context, because just because something is attackable doesn't mean that you have risk, because maybe that attack doesn't lead anywhere. So applying business context to say, the risk is much higher here because this is a $500 million a year business unit versus, the same risk on a smaller environment, which is $2 million, is not as important. But then after that, what you want to be able to do as a security team is to give the IT and the dev team a very curated and focused list of items, which is actually going to bring the risk down, rather than today when they're using just CVSS as an example in risk management. They are fixing a lot of things that actually don't reduce the risk. And we did this interesting proof of concept recently with a customer where we imported 65 million risk factors across all of their assets, all of their tools. Once we applied the threat intelligence, it only came down to 2 million findings that actually had any real possibility of any compromise happening. But then we applied the business context of which was important machine to them, and then it came down to 300,000. And then that gives you the exact insight of what needs to be fixed. And then of course our platform goes further to even apply patches and apply mitigation so that those things are also fixed, not just giving you dashboards. So as a IT team, as a security team, if you spend all your time fixing those 60 million findings, it would be a complete waste of company resources. So now bringing that down because of the risk operations center to 300,000. And of course, I joked with the CISO. I said, look, if it costs you $1 to fix every vulnerability, the risk operations center saved you from 65 million to 300,000. And of course, that's not exactly how much the saving will be, but it is a substantial saving because you're not wasting your IT team's time on fixing things that don't matter. They could be doing something more important, right? So exactly to your point, the risk operations center has to create a very actionable outcome and in fact orchestrate the remediation and provide board reporting. So it cannot just be here, so we create some more dashboards because there's already many dashboards available from many tools, but that doesn't mean you have a risk.
Security today is no longer an afterthought, it is a board level discussion. Many companies already use a patchwork of tools. How do you help customers and partner integrate with their existing workflow without requiring a rip and replace strategy?
That's a great question, and Swapnil, you're thinking more from a customer perspective than a vendor perspective, right? Because a lot of vendors go out there and say they are the single pane of glass, and you replace everything that the customer has with their platform, and that's just not the reality, right? Customers and security leadership want to empower individual teams to pick the tool that is the best for that specific thing, like a code scanning tool, application scanning tool, infrastructure scanning tool, cloud scanning tool. And that's exactly the advantage of a risk operations center concept framework, is that it actually does consolidate data from your existing tools. It does not require you to replace something that is out there to be able to make it work. Of course, if you leverage some of the modules that Qualys offers, you're going to get higher telemetry and higher quality data, but it doesn't require you if today. So when we are going out and we're implementing the risk operations center, we're taking data from CrowdStrike and Wiz and Palo Alto Networks and Defender and Tenable and Rapid7. So we are the idea of the risk operations center is not to have a conversation of, okay, replace everything and I'll give you this beautiful thing. Let's work with what you have. Let's work with what you already have implemented. But instead of having 10 different dashboards from 10 different tools that don't explain to you what the actual dollar value risk is, how about we take data from those different modules and the different tools that you have and provide you a unique view that actually, in fact, improves your ROI of the investment that you have made in those other tools. Because if I can take your existing tool, take the data, provide you a visibility that actually tells you which out of the elements of that tool are the most relevant, you might actually be saving time for your developers not to be fixing issues found in a code scanner if those that software is not even running in a production environment, right? So in fact, the implementation of a risk operations center makes the CISO and the CIO very strategic to the board. They are not talking about tactical stuff. They're talking about strategic vision that enables business, and the risk operations center enables that by sitting on top of the existing tools that they have. And that's where the enterprise true risk management platform from Qualys, which is our risk operations center, is very valuable because we are now walking into with customers that have other tools and just helping them get a much better perspective of their investment in those tools.
Let's talk about GenAI. Everybody's talking about GenAI, right? How does Qualys help organizations both secure AI workload and also leverage AI, especially agentic AI, within the ROC framework to enhance operations?
Look, that's a very interesting point you bring up, both from the aspects of how do we look at AI and security wise, and then how do we look at AI as part of the risk operations center. Look, from an AI security perspective, it's funny that you mentioned, like GenAI is not as hard anymore, and which is true because, 2 years ago it was cloud security. Now it's GenAI, and then next year it's going to be quantum. The customer still has to figure out what should they spend on which risk factor. So just because you have new risk factors like Gen AI and because quantum is coming up, how do you figure out where the budget should go, where the risk is coming from? How much do you plan? How much do you will you lose if there is a compromise from that particular risk factor? And so, Risk Operations Center is very helpful from that perspective because it is going to take all of your risk factors from existing infrastructure, plus the new risk factors coming in from AI, plus new risk factors that are coming in from quantum, and provide you a single holistic view of the different areas where your risk is coming from. And sometimes maybe the way I've implemented AI right now is not actually leading to a lot of risk for you because it's implemented in an environment that doesn't lead to any major breach or compromise or outage. So that's where the Risk Operations Center is providing you a more holistic view of your risk, and then Gen AI risk and quantum risk become part of that. On the other side, I think there is transformational use of AI that can be done as part of the Risk Operations Center. And we are excited because we have implemented that capability as part of our Risk Operations Center, which we call as Enterprise Risk Management Solution. Because what it does is that agentic AI actually enables Gen AI to be leveraged a lot better, right? So human is not sitting there asking questions. And agentic AI can create a workflow that allows you to triage a lot of your risk factors. I gave the example of 65 million findings being injected. Now, 65 million risk findings, narrowing that down to 300,000. There's a lot of agentic AI and Gen AI that can be used to bring in the intelligence and the smartness so you can reduce your dependence on human analyst, which is already in the cyber industry, is very hard to hire folks that can do a lot of that. And so this makes the human analyst smarter and more intelligent, and the human analyst can do more of the higher level intelligence work potentially by having agentic AI really help with triaging a lot of your risk factors so that you can hyper focus and concentrate on the risk factors that actually impact your business from a dollar value perspective.
As we discussed that security is now a boardroom conversation, how do you see the role of ROC evolving from the lens of board level shareholders who care about risk outcomes, not just tools?
Yeah, I agree. They're all connected because look, at the end of the day, the board is really focused on risk management for the company, right? And so they don't necessarily care about vulnerabilities and misconfigurations and CSPM and CWPP and containers and all of that, right? Like that's all sort of the new shiny thing that keeps coming up. What the board really wants to know every quarter when the report is provided is what is the risk to the company from the entire digital surface and in dollar terms, and where is that in terms of the probability of that loss happening, and which is the value at risk and the loss happening, and what is the plan to reduce that possibility to an acceptable level. They really don't care about containers and container security and code scanning or any of that, right? And so we found that in a lot of our conversations with the board members, they just wanted to see a much more simplified and outcome of risk management. And that's really where the Risk Operations Center provides a board reporting that has nothing to do with the infrastructure containers or anything like that. It is really about the equation of currently what are the risk factors, how do they impact the possibility of the loss, and go from there. And so it the Risk Operations Center, I think in my mind, the framework is evergreen because no matter what new technology comes, the decision of how much you should invest in securing that technology has to be then excuse me, has to be grounded in how much loss you can potentially have. And so even if a new technology that we don't even know today is going to come up in 2 years from now, a year from now, when that new technology comes up, the question needs to be asked, what loss could we have? And what is the probability of that loss happening right now? And how much should we invest to reduce that loss down? And risk management has three components, which is risk mitigation, where you use tools and things like that to reduce the risk. Second is risk acceptance. At some point, you're going to say, look, this is the risk I'm willing to accept. And then the third component is whatever risk you cannot accept, you need to transfer that to somebody, which is your cyber risk insurance companies, right? And so bringing that equation is what the board wants to know, whether new technology comes or not. How much are you putting to mitigate? How much are you willing to accept? And how much are you transferring to an insurance broker or insurance cyber insurance company? And overall, now do they feel like the risk of digital breach is actually mitigated for the company, is all the board wants to know. And that's where we signed the partnership with Diligent, which is used by a lot of the board members, where we provide that kind of a risk operations center view to the board members. And in my opinion, every board member should be asking their security CISO or whoever is at the board meeting, where is your risk operations center? Because that is going to focus them on not just spending on tools, but focusing on an outcome that is meaningful to the company and the board.
What we just heard is a shift from dashboards to decisions. ROC is more than a framework. It's a mindset for treating cyber risk like a business problem. Sumedh, thank you so much for joining us and sharing how Qualys is pushing cybersecurity into a more actionable, board-ready space. A lot of work is going on in this space. You folks are doing a lot of amazing job in this space. So I would love to have you back on the show, but I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Swapnil. It was a pleasure meeting you. And I really enjoyed the conversation because you really maintained it at the level of business and not getting into the individual technology, which at the end of the day will come and go, as you said, right? We need to think of how cyber risk impacts business.
And now back to our audience. If this conversation helped you rethink your own security strategy, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. More episodes coming soon on Secure by Design. Thanks for watching.